The Art of Persuasion, Psychology of Influence. Welcome to one of the most powerful and practical areas of psychology, the science of persuasion and influence. Every day, we're surrounded by attempts to influence our decisions, from advertisements and political campaigns to conversations with friends and colleagues. Understanding how persuasion works doesn't just help us become more effective communicators. It also protects us from manipulation and helps us make better decisions. The principles we'll explore today aren't tricks or manipulation tactics. They're fundamental aspects of human psychology that explain why we say yes to some requests and no to others. These principles are so deeply embedded in our social fabric that they operate automatically, often below our conscious awareness. What makes this topic so fascinating is that influence is a two-way street. We're constantly being influenced by others, but we're also constantly influencing them, whether we realize it or not. By understanding these psychological principles, we can become more ethical and effective in our own influence attempts while simultaneously becoming more resistant to unwanted influence from others. Robert Cialdini, often called the godfather of influence, identified many of these principles through years of research and real-world observation. His work has revolutionized our understanding of why people comply with requests and how ethical influence operates in society. Let's explore 10 of the most powerful principles that shape human decision-making every single day. First principle: reciprocity. The principle of reciprocity is perhaps the most fundamental rule of human social interaction. We feel obligated to return favors, pay back debts, and treat others as they have treated us. This psychological rule is so strong that it can override our personal preferences and even our better judgment. Reciprocity evolved as a crucial mechanism for human survival and cooperation. In ancestral environments, those who helped others and repaid favors were more likely to receive help when they needed it. This created a powerful psychological drive to reciprocate that persists in modern society, even in situations where it might not serve our best interests. The power of reciprocity can be seen everywhere. When someone does us a favor, we immediately feel indebted to them. When a waiter brings free mints with the check, tips increase significantly. When politicians do favors for constituents, they create loyalty that extends far beyond the value of the original favor. Even small gifts or concessions can create feelings of obligation that lead to much larger compliance. Marketing professionals exploit reciprocity constantly. Free samples at grocery stores aren't just about letting you taste the product. They create a sense of obligation to purchase. Software companies offer free trials, knowing that many users will feel obligated to pay for the full version after using it extensively. Charitable organizations send small gifts like address labels or calendars, dramatically increasing donation rates. The reciprocity principle also explains why the rejection then retreat technique is so effective. When someone makes a large request that you refuse, then follows up with a smaller request, you're more likely to comply with the second request. The person appears to be making a concession, which triggers your reciprocal obligation to make a concession in return. Politicians use this technique regularly during negotiations. They might propose extreme positions initially, then compromise to positions they actually wanted all along. The other party feels like they're getting a fair deal because the politician appeared to give something up. However, reciprocity isn't always manipulative. It's also the foundation of genuine relationship building, business partnerships, and social cooperation. When used ethically, reciprocity creates positive spirals where people help each other and build mutual trust and respect. To use reciprocity ethically, focus on genuinely helping others without immediately expecting something in return. Be generous with your time, knowledge, and resources when you can afford to be. When you do need to ask for something, Remind people of the relationship and mutual benefit rather than explicitly invoking past favors. To protect yourself from unwanted reciprocity pressure, recognize when someone is trying to create artificial obligation through unrequested favors or gifts. Ask yourself whether the initial favor was genuinely meant to help you or was designed to manipulate your future behavior. Remember that you're not obligated to reciprocate manipulative attempts at influence. Second principle, social proof. Social proof is our tendency to look to others for guidance about how to behave, especially in uncertain situations. When we're unsure what to do, we assume that other people have more information than we do, so we follow their lead. This creates a powerful influence mechanism where the behavior of others shapes our own decisions. The principle of social proof explains everything from fashion trends and restaurant choices to stock market bubbles and social movements. We choose popular restaurants because we assume other diners know something we don't. We laugh more at comedies when we hear others laughing. We're more likely to help someone in distress if we see others helping first. Advertisers heavily exploit social proof through testimonials, customer reviews, and popularity claims. Millions of satisfied customers can't be wrong. Appeals directly to our tendency to follow the crowd. Product ratings and reviews on e-commerce sites work because we trust the collective judgment of other buyers more than marketing claims. Social media has amplified social proof to unprecedented levels. Likes, shares, comments, and follower counts serve as immediate indicators of social approval. Content that appears popular becomes more popular, creating viral effects where arbitrary factors can determine massive success or failure. The effectiveness of social proof depends on similarity and relevance. We're more influenced by people who seem similar to ourselves than by those who seem different. A testimonial from someone who shares our age, background, or situation will be more persuasive than one from someone who seems unlike us. Social proof can lead to both positive and negative outcomes. Positive social proof can encourage charitable giving, environmental conservation, tax compliance, and other pro-social behaviors. Public displays of good behavior can create upward spirals where positive actions become self-reinforcing. However, social proof can also perpetuate harmful behaviors and create dangerous situations. Bystander effects occur when people assume others will help, leading to situations where no one acts. Financial bubbles form when investors follow the crowd rather than making independent judgments. Negative social norms can persist when people assume that everyone else accepts problematic behaviors. One particularly dangerous form is negative social proof, where highlighting the prevalence of unwanted behavior actually increases it. Campaigns that emphasize how many people litter, cheat on taxes, or engage in other negative behaviors can backfire by making these behaviors seem normal and acceptable. To use social proof ethically, highlight genuine examples of the behavior you want to encourage. Share success stories, testimonials, and data about positive outcomes. Make good behaviors visible and celebrated. When possible, show that people similar to your audience are already engaging in the desired behavior. To resist unwanted social proof influence, think independently before looking to others for guidance. Ask yourself what you would do if you had to decide without knowing what others were doing. Remember that popular doesn't always mean correct or beneficial. Sometimes the crowd is wrong, and independent thinking leads to better outcomes. Third principle, authority. The authority principle reflects our deep psychological tendency to comply with legitimate authorities and experts. From childhood, we're taught to obey parents, teachers, and other authority figures. This training creates lasting psychological patterns where we automatically defer to those who appear to have superior knowledge, power, or position. Stanley Milgram's famous obedience experiments demonstrated the extraordinary power of authority. Participants were willing to administer what they believed were dangerous electric shocks to other people simply because an authority figure in a lab coat told them to continue. Even when participants felt uncomfortable and wanted to stop, the authorities' commands overrode their personal moral judgments. Authority influence operates through several mechanisms. Expertise authority comes from superior knowledge or skills. We follow doctors' medical advice and financial advisors' investment recommendations because we believe they know more than we do. Positional authority stems from official roles and titles. We comply with police officers, judges, and bosses because of their formal power. Symbols of authority are remarkably powerful. Uniforms, titles, expensive clothing, luxury cars, and impressive offices all signal authority and increase compliance. Research shows that people are more likely to follow instructions from someone wearing a business suit than casual clothing, even when the authority is completely irrelevant to the situation. Professional credentials and titles carry enormous influence weight. People addressed as doctor or professor receive more deference than those without titles, even in contexts where their expertise isn't relevant. Fake credentials and inflated titles can be surprisingly effective at gaining compliance, which is why credential fraud is so common. However, legitimate authority serves important social functions. It allows society to organize complex activities, coordinate group efforts, and benefit from specialized knowledge. Medical authority helps people make better health decisions. Legal authority maintains social order. Educational authority helps transfer knowledge across generations. The key is distinguishing between legitimate and illegitimate authority. Legitimate authorities have relevant expertise, genuine credentials, and your best interests in mind. Illegitimate authorities use symbols and titles to gain compliance for their own benefit rather than yours. Marketers often exploit authority through celebrity endorsements, expert testimonials, and impressive-sounding credentials. A celebrity endorsing a product borrows authority from their fame, even though their expertise might be completely irrelevant to the product category. Scientific-sounding language and fake credentials can make products seem more credible than they actually are. To use authority ethically, establish your legitimate credentials and expertise honestly. Share your qualifications and experience when relevant, but don't exaggerate or claim expertise you don't have. When speaking outside your area of expertise, acknowledge the limits of your knowledge and defer to actual experts. To resist inappropriate authority influence, question the relevance and legitimacy of claimed authority. Ask yourself whether the person actually has relevant expertise for the decision at hand. Look for genuine credentials rather than impressive-sounding titles. Remember that authority figures can be wrong, biased, or acting in their own interests rather than yours. Fourth principle: consistency and commitment. The consistency principle is based on our powerful psychological drive to appear and be consistent with our previous commitments, statements, and actions. Once we take a position or make a commitment, we feel internal and external pressure to behave in ways that align with that commitment, even when circumstances change or we realize the commitment wasn't in our best interest. This drive for consistency serves important psychological and social functions. Consistency helps us maintain a coherent sense of identity and makes our behavior predictable to others, which facilitates social cooperation. It also reduces the mental effort required for decision-making by providing automatic guidance for future choices. The power of commitment becomes even stronger when commitments are active, public, effortful, and voluntary. When people write down their goals, announce them publicly, invest significant effort in pursuing them, and feel they made the choice freely, they become extremely committed to following through. Sales professionals understand this principle well. They often ask customers to fill out paperwork, make small initial commitments, or express their preferences publicly. Car salespeople might ask you to take a test drive and imagine owning the car, creating mental commitment before discussing price. Real estate agents encourage you to envision living in a house, making it harder to walk away from a purchase. Political campaigns use commitment techniques extensively. They ask supporters to put signs in their yards, wear campaign buttons, or volunteer for activities. These small commitments create psychological consistency pressure to vote for the candidate and encourage others to do so as well. The foot in the door technique, which we'll explore in more detail later, relies heavily on the consistency principle. By getting people to agree to small requests first, you increase the likelihood they'll agree to larger requests later, because they want to be consistent with their previous agreement. However, consistency can also trap people in harmful patterns. Someone who makes a bad investment might continue throwing money at it rather than admitting the mistake. People in unhealthy relationships might stay because they've already invested so much time and effort. Public commitments can prevent people from changing course when new information suggests they should. The key is distinguishing between helpful consistency that serves your values and goals, and mindless consistency that traps you in counterproductive patterns. Healthy consistency involves staying true to your core principles while remaining flexible about tactics and specific decisions when circumstances change. To use consistency ethically, help people make commitments that genuinely serve their best interests. Encourage goal setting, public accountability, and follow through on positive commitments. Make it easy for people to take small steps toward larger goals they actually want to achieve. To protect yourself from unwanted consistency pressure, regularly reassess your commitments and goals. Ask yourself whether your previous decisions still make sense given current circumstances and information. Don't let past commitments prevent you from making better choices in the present. Remember that changing your mind based on new information is often a sign of wisdom, not weakness. Fifth principle, liking. The liking principle is beautifully simple. We're more easily influenced by people we like than by people we don't like. This seems obvious, but the factors that determine liking are often subtle and operate below our conscious awareness. Understanding what makes people likable can dramatically improve your influence effectiveness. Several factors increase liking. Physical attractiveness creates a halo effect where attractive people are perceived as more intelligent, competent, and trustworthy. This bias is so strong that attractive people receive lighter criminal sentences, higher salaries, and more help from strangers, even when attractiveness is completely irrelevant to the situation. Similarity is another powerful liking factor. We like people who are similar to us in background, interests, opinions, and values. This similarity can be real or perceived. Even trivial similarities like sharing a birthday or having similar names can increase liking and compliance. Salespeople often search for common ground with prospects, mentioning shared interests or experiences to build rapport. Compliments and flattery increase liking, even when they're obviously motivated by self-interest. We enjoy hearing positive things about ourselves, and we tend to like people who make us feel good. However, compliments must seem somewhat genuine to be effective. Excessive or obviously false flattery can backfire. Cooperation toward shared goals builds liking through what psychologists call the Benjamin Franklin effect. When we work together with someone toward a common objective, we tend to like them more, even if we were neutral or negative toward them initially. This explains why team-building activities and collaborative projects can improve relationships. Repeated exposure also increases liking through the mere exposure effect. The more we see someone, the more we tend to like them, assuming the interactions are neutral or positive. This is why proximity often leads to friendship, and why familiar faces seem more trustworthy than unfamiliar ones. Association plays a crucial role in liking as well. We tend to like people who are associated with positive experiences and dislike those associated with negative experiences, even when they didn't cause those experiences. This is why companies hire attractive models for their advertisements and why restaurants train servers to be cheerful and friendly. However, the liking principle can be manipulated in unethical ways. Con artists often invest significant time in building false relationships with their victims, exploiting the liking principle to gain trust before taking advantage. Salespeople might fake similarities or interests to build artificial rapport. The key is distinguishing between genuine liking based on authentic relationships and connections versus artificial liking created through manipulation. Genuine liking develops naturally over time through real similarities, shared experiences, and mutual benefit. Artificial liking often feels forced or appears too quickly given the actual relationship history. To use liking ethically, focus on building genuine relationships and connections. Find real common ground and shared interests. Be generous with sincere compliments and appreciation. Look for opportunities to collaborate and work toward mutual goals. Invest time in getting to know people as individuals rather than just trying to influence them. To protect yourself from liking-based manipulation, be aware when someone seems to be working unusually hard to get you to like them, especially if they want something from you. Ask yourself whether the relationship feels genuine or artificial. Remember that liking someone doesn't mean you should automatically agree to their requests or trust their judgment about decisions that affect you. Sixth principle, scarcity. The scarcity principle leverages our tendency to value things more highly when they're rare, limited, or difficult to obtain. This psychological bias evolved because truly scarce resources often were more valuable in ancestral environments. However, in modern society, perceived scarcity is often artificially created to increase demand and compliance. Scarcity creates value through several psychological mechanisms. Loss aversion makes us fear missing out on something more than we desire gaining something equivalent. Limited availability suggests that others value the item highly, providing social proof of its worth. Competition for scarce resources triggers our competitive instincts and desire to win. Marketers exploit scarcity constantly through limited time offers, exclusive access, and artificial constraints on supply. Only 3 left in stock. Messages create urgency even when inventory could easily be replenished. Limited time offer creates deadline pressure that rushes decision-making. Exclusive membership appeals to our desire for special status and access. The effectiveness of scarcity depends partly on the reason for the limitation. Scarcity due to high demand, selling fast because everyone wants it, is more persuasive than scarcity due to limited supply. We didn't make very many. Demand-driven scarcity provides social proof along with scarcity, doubling the psychological impact. Time-limited scarcity often creates more urgency than quantity-limited scarcity. Deadlines force action, while limited quantities might just encourage people to wait for restocking. This is why sale events have specific end dates rather than just promising limited quantities. Recently lost freedoms or opportunities feel more valuable than those that were never available. When something becomes less available than it was before, people want it more than when it was always rare. This explains why censored books become bestsellers and why banned substances often become more popular after prohibition. However, artificial scarcity can backfire when people recognize the manipulation. If customers discover that limited time offers are constantly renewed, or that while supplies last, items are never actually out of stock, trust decreases and future scarcity claims become less effective. Real scarcity, genuine limitations on time, quantity, or access, can be communicated honestly without manipulation. If you truly have limited availability or capacity, Explaining this honestly can help people make timely decisions. The key is being truthful about limitations rather than creating false urgency. Digital products and services create interesting scarcity dynamics. Information and software can be copied infinitely at nearly zero cost, but artificial scarcity can be created through exclusive access, membership limits, or time-bound availability. Online courses might have limited enrollment periods, creating urgency even though the digital content could serve unlimited students. To use scarcity ethically, focus on genuine limitations and constraints. If your time, attention, or capacity is truly limited, communicate this honestly to help people make informed decisions. Don't create artificial deadlines or false limitations just to pressure people into quick decisions. To resist unwanted scarcity pressure, take time to think before acting on urgent offers. Ask yourself whether the scarcity is real or artificial. Consider whether you would want the item or opportunity if it weren't scarce. Remember that truly valuable opportunities often come around again, while artificial scarcity is designed to prevent careful consideration. Seventh principle, contrast. The contrast principle shows how our perception of something is heavily influenced by what we compare it to. The same item can seem expensive or cheap, large or small, attractive or unattractive, depending on what we've seen immediately before. This relative perception can be manipulated to influence decisions and judgments. Contrast effects are fundamental to human perception and extend far beyond financial decisions. A moderately attractive person seems more attractive when surrounded by less attractive people, and less attractive when surrounded by more attractive people. A 70-degree day feels warm in winter and cool in summer because of the contrast with recent temperatures. Retail environments strategically use contrast to influence purchasing decisions. Expensive items are often displayed first to make moderately priced items seem reasonable by comparison. Real estate agents might show overpriced or undesirable properties first, making the property they actually want to sell seem like a great deal in contrast. The decoy effect, which we'll explore separately, is a specific application of contrast where a deliberately inferior option makes another option look more attractive. But contrast works more broadly by establishing reference points that shape all subsequent evaluations. Price anchoring through contrast is everywhere in commerce. Restaurants place expensive wine at the top of the wine list, knowing most people won't order it, but will choose something that seems moderately priced by comparison. Software companies offer multiple pricing tiers, with the middle option often being the most popular because it seems reasonable compared to the premium option. Sequential contrast can be more powerful than simultaneous contrast. When people evaluate options one after another rather than side by side, the order of presentation has enormous impact on preferences. This is why job interviewers often rate candidates differently depending on who they interviewed previously. Contrast manipulation can be subtle and unconscious. Simply being exposed to images of expensive cars before shopping for a car can shift price expectations upward. Seeing pictures of luxury homes before house hunting makes average homes seem less appealing. These priming effects demonstrate how context shapes perception, even when we're not consciously making comparisons. However, contrast can also be used positively to help people appreciate what they have and make better decisions. Gratitude exercises often work by contrasting current circumstances with worse alternatives. Before and after comparisons can help people see progress and improvements they might otherwise take for granted. The key ethical issue with contrast is whether it's being used to provide helpful perspective or to manipulate through misleading comparisons. Showing someone how much money they could save by choosing a more efficient option provides useful contrast. Creating artificial reference points designed solely to make other options seem more attractive crosses into manipulation. To use contrast ethically, Provide genuine comparisons that help people make informed decisions. Show real alternatives and honest before and after scenarios. Help people understand their options in context without creating misleading reference points designed to bias their choices. To protect yourself from contrast manipulation, establish your own reference points before entering decision-making situations. Research typical prices, features, and options before shopping. Be aware that your first exposure to options will likely serve as an anchor for subsequent comparisons. Take time to step back from immediate comparisons and consider whether your reference points are appropriate. Eighth principle, reason why. The reason why principle demonstrates that people are much more likely to comply with requests when given a reason, even when the reason isn't particularly compelling. Simply providing any explanation increases compliance because humans have a deep psychological need to understand causality and make sense of requests. Ellen Langer's famous photocopying experiment illustrated this principle perfectly. When people asked to cut in line at a copy machine without giving a reason, only 60% complied. When they gave a real reason, because I'm in a rush, 94% complied. Surprisingly, when they gave a meaningless reason, because I have to make copies, 93% still complied. The word because itself seemed to trigger automatic compliance. This principle works because humans are naturally causal thinkers. We want to understand why things happen and why people make requests. When someone provides a reason, it satisfies our need for explanation and makes the request seem more legitimate, even when the reason isn't actually very good. The effectiveness of reasons depends partly on their quality and relevance. Better reasons produce higher compliance rates, but even weak reasons often work better than no reasons at all. The reason doesn't have to be entirely rational. Emotional reasons, social reasons, and even circular reasons can be effective. Marketing and advertising heavily exploit the reason why principle. Instead of just telling people to buy a product, ads explain why they should buy it. Because you deserve the best, because your family's safety matters, or because time is money. These reasons provide psychological justification for the purchase decision. Political campaigns use reason why extensively to justify policy positions and voting choices. Candidates don't just ask for votes. They explain why people should vote for them, why their policies are better, and why the election matters. The reasons become part of voters' internal justification for their choices. In personal relationships, providing reasons for requests dramatically improves compliance and reduces resentment. Instead of just asking someone to do something, explaining why it's important, how it helps, or why timing matters makes people much more willing to help. However, the reason why principle can be manipulated through fake or misleading explanations. Scam artists often provide elaborate but false reasons for their requests. Salespeople might give reasons that sound good, but don't actually justify the purchase. The key is evaluating whether reasons are genuine and relevant. Sometimes people provide too many reasons, which can actually decrease persuasion. When someone gives multiple explanations for the same request, it can seem like they're trying too hard to convince you, which triggers skepticism. A few good reasons are often more effective than many mediocre ones. To use the reason why principle ethically, provide genuine, relevant explanations for your requests. Help people understand not just what you want, but why it matters and how it benefits them or others. Be honest about your motivations and don't manufacture fake reasons just to increase compliance. To protect yourself from reason why manipulation, evaluate the quality and relevance of provided reasons. Ask yourself whether the explanation actually justifies the request or if it's just designed to make you more compliant. Be especially skeptical of elaborate explanations for simple requests or reasons that seem emotionally manipulative rather than logically relevant. Ninth principle, decoy effect. The decoy effect occurs when the presence of a third, deliberately inferior option makes one of the other options seem more attractive than it would in a simple two-option comparison. The decoy is strategically designed to be dominated by the target option, making the target appear to be excellent value by comparison. This effect is also known as asymmetric dominance because the decoy is dominated by the target option on all important attributes but competitive with the alternative option. The decoy shifts preferences toward the target without actually being chosen itself. It serves purely as a reference point that changes how people evaluate the other options. A classic example involves magazine subscription offers. Digital only for $59, print only for $125, or digital plus print for $125. The print-only option is clearly inferior to the digital plus print option at the same price, making the combined option seem like an incredible deal. Few people choose the print-only decoy, but its presence dramatically increases preference for the combined option over digital only. Retailers use decoy effects extensively in product lineups. Electronics stores might offer 3 TV models: Basic for $300, Premium for $800, and Deluxe for $1,000. The Premium model serves as a decoy that makes the Deluxe model seem reasonably priced while being clearly superior to the Basic model. Most customers end up choosing the Deluxe option. Restaurant menus strategically place very expensive items that few people will order, but that make other expensive items seem moderate by comparison. The $50 steak makes the $30 fish seem reasonable, even though customers might have balked at paying $30 for fish in a simpler menu without the ultra-expensive option. The decoy effect works because it changes the decision context and provides a favorable comparison point for the target option. Instead of choosing between two options with different trade-offs, the presence of the decoy creates one option that clearly dominates another, making the choice feel obvious and rational. Movie theaters use decoy pricing with popcorn sizes: small for $3, medium for $6.50, and large for $7. The medium serves as a decoy that makes the large seem like great value. Just 50 cents more for much more popcorn. Most customers choose the large, even though they might have been happy with the small in a two-option scenario. The effect is particularly powerful when people are making decisions under time pressure or cognitive load. When we're busy or stressed, we rely more heavily on simple comparisons and heuristics, making us more susceptible to decoy influence. However, the decoy effect can backfire if it's too obvious or if customers become aware of the manipulation. When people recognize that an option exists solely to make another option look better, they may react negatively and choose differently out of spite or principle. To use decoy effects ethically, ensure that all options provide genuine value to different customer segments. The decoy shouldn't be completely useless. It should serve customers who actually have those specific needs, while also providing helpful contrast for others. Be transparent about why different options exist and what benefits each provides. To protect yourself from decoy manipulation, ignore obviously inferior options and focus on comparing the options you're actually considering. Ask yourself whether you would make the same choice if the decoy option weren't available. Consider whether the superior option is actually superior for your specific needs, or if it just looks good in comparison to the decoy. 10th principle, foot in the door technique. The foot in the door technique involves making a small initial request that people are likely to agree to, followed by a larger request that's more likely to be accepted because of the initial compliance. This technique works by leveraging the consistency principle. Once people agree to something small, they want to be consistent with that agreement when asked for something bigger. The technique gets its name from door-to-door salespeople who would literally get their foot in the door to prevent it from being closed. then gradually work up to larger requests. The psychological version works similarly by establishing a pattern of agreement that makes subsequent requests harder to refuse. Research demonstrates the effectiveness of this approach across many contexts. In one classic study, homeowners who agreed to put a small, "Be a safe driver" sign in their yard were much more likely to later agree to install a large, ugly sign compared to homeowners who were only asked about the large sign. The small initial commitment changed how they saw themselves and their relationship to the cause. Political campaigns use foot in the door extensively. They might start by asking people to take a bumper sticker, then later ask them to put a sign in their yard, then volunteer for phone calls, then donate money. Each step builds on the previous commitment and makes the next request seem reasonable. Charitable organizations follow similar patterns. They might first ask people to sign a petition, then request a small donation, then ask for monthly giving, then invite major gift conversations. The progression creates increasing commitment and identification with the cause. Online businesses use digital versions of foot in the door through email signups, free trials, and progressive engagement. Once someone provides their email address, they're more likely to engage with subsequent content and offers. Free trial users become paying customers at higher rates than people who are only offered paid options. The technique works because small initial commitments change self-perception and create psychological momentum. When people agree to a small request, they begin to see themselves as the type of person who supports that cause or organization. This identity shift makes larger requests feel more consistent with their self-image. However, the requests must be related and the progression must feel natural. Random or unrelated requests don't benefit from foot-in-the-door effects. The larger request should feel like a logical extension of the smaller one, not a completely different ask. Timing matters significantly in foot-in-the-door techniques. The larger request should come after people have had time to internalize their initial commitment, but before so much time passes that they forget about it. Usually, this means days or weeks rather than minutes or months. The technique can be ethically used to help people gradually commit to positive behaviors and goals. Fitness programs might start with small exercise commitments and gradually build up intensity. Environmental campaigns might begin with easy conservation actions and work up to larger lifestyle changes. To use foot in the door ethically, ensure that both the small and large requests genuinely benefit the person you're asking. Start with requests that are easy to fulfill and clearly valuable. Make the progression logical and voluntary, allowing people to opt out at any stage without pressure or guilt. To protect yourself from unwanted foot-in-the-door influence, be cautious about small commitments when you suspect they might lead to larger requests you don't want to fulfill. Ask yourself whether you would be comfortable with reasonable extensions of any commitment you're considering. Remember that agreeing to something small doesn't obligate you to agree to something large later. Conclusion: the ethical use of influence. Understanding the psychology of persuasion gives us tremendous power. The power to influence others and the power to resist unwanted influence ourselves. With this power comes the responsibility to use these techniques ethically and to help others recognize when they're being manipulated. The principles we've explored aren't just academic concepts. They're practical tools that affect every aspect of our personal and professional lives. Whether we're parents trying to encourage good behavior, managers motivating teams, marketers promoting products, or simply friends trying to coordinate social activities, we use these influence principles constantly. The key to ethical influence is alignment between your interests and the interests of the people you're trying to influence. When what you want genuinely benefits the other person, using psychological principles to communicate more effectively serves everyone. When what you want primarily benefits you at their expense, these same techniques become manipulation. Ethical influence also requires honesty and transparency. Using true reciprocity, genuine authority, real scarcity, and authentic liking creates win-win situations where both parties benefit. Creating artificial versions of these principles through deception or manipulation ultimately damages relationships and trust. As you apply these principles in your own life, remember that influence is most powerful when it's invisible and automatic. The best influence doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like natural decision-making. When people feel manipulated or pressured, they often resist and may later resent both the request and the person making it. Building long-term influence requires investing in genuine relationships, developing real expertise, and consistently acting in ways that benefit others. Quick influence tactics might work in the short term, but sustainable influence comes from being someone others trust and want to help. In our increasingly connected world, where we're constantly bombarded with influence attempts through advertising, social media, and personal interactions, understanding these principles becomes a form of mental self-defense. When you recognize the techniques being used on you, you can make more conscious decisions about when to comply and when to resist. The goal isn't to become immune to all influence. That would make us social outcasts and prevent us from benefiting from others' expertise and suggestions. Instead, the goal is to become more conscious about influence processes, so we can choose when to be influenced and when to maintain independence. Remember that these principles work because they're based on fundamental aspects of human psychology that generally serve us well. Reciprocity builds cooperation. Authority helps us learn from experts, social proof helps us navigate uncertainty, and consistency helps us maintain integrity. The problems arise when these natural tendencies are exploited, or when we apply them inappropriately. By understanding how influence works, we become better communicators, more effective leaders, and wiser decision makers. We can use these principles to build stronger relationships, create positive change, and help others make decisions that truly serve their interests. The art of ethical persuasion lies not in manipulation or trickery, but in understanding human psychology well enough to communicate in ways that resonate with how people naturally think and make decisions. When we align our influence attempts with people's genuine needs and values, we create outcomes that benefit everyone involved. Thank you for joining me in exploring the fascinating psychology of influence. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Use these insights wisely and ethically to make the world a little bit better for everyone.